Welcome to the Dying to Know More podcast. I'm Ashley Haugen. Today, we are talking about what may just be the single most important piece of information that you can have in your brain at a time when you are dealing with a loved one's passing. It's called the funeral rule. The Federal Trade Commission first enacted the funeral rule in 1984, and then they revised it in 1994. In essence, the funeral rule is a list of guidelines that's designed to inform funeral providers of legal rules and expectations that they are bound by, but it's also designed to protect consumers from unfair and dishonest practices at a time when you are at your absolute most vulnerable. Before we get into what the funeral rule entails, let's discuss why it was established in the first place, as well as why it was amended just a decade after it was enacted. So, it was originally established in acknowledgement of the fact of just how many decisions families have to make when when a loved one dies. So, you've got, burial or cremation, casket or urn. Do you need embalming? Are you going to have a service? What about flowers? What about a reception and transportation to a cemetery? It's like the list is endless of all of the decisions that have to be made. And when you are dealing with that passage of a loved one, you kind of are on autopilot. You're grieving, you're vulnerable, and it just so the funeral rule lays out these kind of fair play guidelines for all funeral providers and ultimately protects consumers during this time. So, why was the rule amended 10 years after it was passed? And what were the amendments made? Well, essentially, it provided further clarity around certain facets of the rule. So, for instance, one amendment banned providers from charging a casket handling fee. So, if someone purchases a casket from a third party company to be used at the funeral home, well, the funeral home can't then charge an additional fee, a handling fee for using a third party casket. So, clarifications like that were made just so that everything was crystal clear, the rules were set, and everybody was on the same page. So, again, the funeral rule was designed to provide a clear set of parameters for funeral providers. So, who's considered a funeral provider? A funeral provider is defined as anybody who sells funeral goods or services to the general public. So, this can be somebody who prepares bodies for burial or cremation, it can be somebody who provides services or ceremonies, somebody who sells products to the public for use during or with a funeral ceremony. So, if you are a funeral provider, the funeral rule says that you must provide to the consumer all pricing up front and give the consumer the right to choose only the items and services that they want. So, what does this mean? It means options for goods and services. They can't be presented like some sort of package deal, like an all or nothing situation. So, how does that work? Well, first and foremost, you, you should be provided by the funeral provider, but if you're not, you can ask for something called the General Price List, or GPL. The GPL is basically an itemized menu of all the goods and services that the funeral home offers or the funeral provider offers. You get this list. The rule states that this list must be provided once there is in-person or face-to-face engagement between the customer and the funeral provider to discuss arrangements. And it has to be offered in a way so that it's like, here is this list. You can take it with you and review it. It can't be something like, here it is, and then it goes away and you never see it again. So it's something that will be provided to you so that you can take it and marinate with it, spend some time with it, review it, price shop, price compare, all of that. So you'll have that price list to look at. And then the GPL also must include some additional bits of information, such as your rights to select only what you need or want. You don't it's not an all or nothing thing. You can pick out various, it's kind of a la carte, if you will. And it's got to also include information on embalming, whether it's required or not. It's not required in all states. So it's got to include casket pricing, alternative container pricing for direct cremation, outer burial container pricing. And then it also has basic service fees. And those are basically fees that cover the admin work and the funeral coordination, what the service that is being provided to you by the funeral provider. So that's the GPL. which is really kind of the heart of the funeral rule, or the big part of it. Now, if you arrange services, you also receive a written statement of goods and services selected, which shows exactly what you've chosen, those costs, and any legal or cemetery requirements. So, along those sorts of full disclosure lines, if you call the funeral home instead of stopping by, so if you're, kind of, you Google funeral homes near me or whatever that is, and you find several because you're not savvy in what your options are at first, you can call and they are required to give you pricing information over the phone so that you can comparison shop before committing to anything. Next, you have the ability to pick and choose. Aside from the basic services fee, everything else is completely optional. That means embalming, flowers, use of a hearse, even the casket. You decide what on that list you want, and the funeral provider, by law, by funeral rule, must honor that. And finally, you absolutely do not have to buy a casket or an urn from the funeral home. And if you listen to the episode where I interviewed the founders of Titan Casket, you already knew this part. Basically, if you find a casket or urn online or somewhere else, maybe it's cheaper or you like something better than what you've seen at the funeral provider's location, the people you're working with, they have to accept it, meaning you have it shipped to the funeral home and they must use it and they cannot charge you a fee to do so. So that is the gist. Just for fun, let's do some practical application with an imaginary family. We'll call them the Johnsons. So they've just lost their father, the Johnsons have. They're sitting down at a funeral home to start their conversation with the funeral provider. The funeral director shows them a package for $10,000, which includes embalming, a nice casket, it includes flowers, limousine service. And the family, as you might expect, is overwhelmed. They've just lost a key member of their family. If you've ever lost someone close to you, you know how overwhelming it is and how you're sort of just on autopilot, like I said. So the Johnsons are on autopilot, and it feels like, oh my God, this $10,000 package is literally the only option. That's so much money. I don't even know if we need all of that stuff. Thankfully, the Johnsons heard this episode of Dying to Know More. And they know all about the funeral rule, and they know they have choices. They can review the general price list and realize, oh, embalming isn't required for the kind of service they want. They also know, oh, dad wanted cremation, so they don't need the $4,000 casket. They looked online and they found the perfect urn for half the cost of the ones that they saw at the funeral home, and they decided to skip the limo service. So in the end, they've saved thousands of dollars, and they're still honoring their father, in a way that feels meaningful and on target for what they wanted for their father and what their father would want. And that's why the funeral rule matters. It's there so families can grieve and make decisions without being pressured or misled, and so they can walk away knowing that they honored their loved one their way. So remember, next time you are tasked with planning a funeral, ask for, if it's not provided to you, ask for the general price list. Shop around if you need to, and know that you have options even in life's most difficult and tragic moments. I'd love to hear from you if you knew this rule existed or if you've used this information to your family's benefit already. So drop me a comment. If you want to check out the funeral rule for yourself, I'll drop the link in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe to keep up with any new interviews. I've got a great one coming up about death anxiety later this week. And yeah, just to keep up with episodes of Dying to Know More. I'm Ashley Haugen. I hope you have a great day.